Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Stephanie Cox in for Tiffany Meyer. Our top story, from media moguls to TikTok investors. President Trump says Rupert Murdoch and his son Lachlan could be part of the proposed U.S. deal to keep TikTok running. A bipartisan delegation of U.S. lawmakers meeting with top Chinese officials. In a rare move, they also sat down with China's defense minister. The Chinese Communist Party is trying to expand its presence in the U.S., and some Chinese students are helping make that happen. An investigative reporter who uncovered the matter joins us to break it down. A Chinese journalist facing more jail time. She had reported on the early COVID-19 outbreak in Wuhan, exposing Beijing's cover-up. And two women in their 70s facing more than 2 years in prison in southern China, all for reading a book together. President Trump says media mogul Rupert Murdoch and his son Lachlan, along with tech leaders Larry Ellison and Michael Dell, could step in as U.S. investors to keep TikTok running in the United States. He made the claim Sunday on Fox News' Sunday briefing. Let's zoom in.
I hate to tell you this, but a man named Lachlan is involved.
Media mogul Lachlan Murdoch, who leads Fox Corp, would be involved in the proposed deal to keep TikTok operating in the United States. That's according to U.S. President Donald Trump on Fox News Channel's The Sunday Briefing. It's the latest in efforts to transfer TikTok's U.S. assets away from China's ByteDance. The move lets Trump allies in corporate America gain influence on the social media app, which has 170 million U.S. users and shapes public discourse on politics and culture. Other proposed investors Trump named Sunday were business leaders Larry Ellison and Michael Dell, and Trump said the Murdoch family's 94-year-old patriarch, Rupert, may be involved too.
Really great people, very prominent people, and they're also American patriots. You know, they love this country, so I think they're going to do a really good job. I'm a little prejudiced with TikTok because, you know, I did so well with the young voter.
Trump has included negotiations over TikTok as part of wide-ranging economic talks with China. On Friday, he said China's Xi Jinping had approved the deal with TikTok. Reuters reported Saturday the expected deal sees U.S. investors owning the majority of TikTok's U.S. assets, and there'll be a board of directors with national security and cybersecurity credentials. Sources tell Reuters any investment in TikTok U.S. would come through Fox Corp. Its CEO Lachlan Murdoch recently cemented long-term control of his family's media empire that includes Fox News and The Wall Street Journal, after settling a years-long legal battle with his siblings. Though known for their conservative views, the Murdochs have clashed with Trump before. Trump sued The Wall Street Journal and Rupert Murdoch for defamation after a report in July linked him to a controversial birthday message for convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein.
A group of bipartisan lawmakers recently met with Chinese Premier Li Qiang and Vice Premier He Lifeng. In a rare move, they also met with China's defense minister on Monday, marking the first visit to Beijing by House lawmakers in 6 years. Here's Congressman Adam Smith.
We feel strongly that there should be more frequent visits and more robust conversation. We want to open up the lines of communication.
Congressman Smith led the bipartisan delegation. He's the top Democrat in the House Armed Services Committee. It oversees the U.S. Defense Department and Armed Forces.
Really focused on the mill-to-mill relationship.
China's Defense Minister Dong Jian said the visit marked a good phase in efforts to boost U.S.-China communications. The trip follows a call between President Trump and Chinese leader Xi Jinping last Friday. They reached a deal to sell TikTok's U.S.-based operations and let the U.S. control the app's algorithm. The delegation also met with Vice Premier He Lifeng and discussed trade relations. They met with China's Premier Li Qiang on Sunday. Li called the visit an ice-breaking trip. Next, we take a closer look at a concerning development. A media report found that some Chinese students affiliated with the Chinese Communist Party are setting up party branches on U.S. campuses. To break it down, NTD's Tiffany Meyer spoke with Philip Lenczycki, senior investigative reporter at the Daily Caller News Foundation and the author of the report. Let's dive in.
we found, dozens, over 24 Chinese Communist Party members that have come to study in the United States. And these students came through joint programs between 3 universities in the United States and 2 universities in China. The United States schools were the University of Colorado, Denver, University of Nebraska-Lincoln, and Oklahoma State University. And what we found is that the students from China, among them, were Chinese Communist Party members, and that they were more or less directed to establish Chinese Communist Party branches here in the United States. And while studying in the United States, they maintained contact with their Chinese host, institutions, and would carry out their wishes, which included spreading propaganda and, participating in political and ideological training sessions and all manner of things.
I want to dig into that last part a bit. What exactly are these overseas party branches trying to do on these American campuses?
When we look at these schools, for starters, they are training all their students, whether they're members of the Chinese Communist Party or not, before they go to China. It is a requirement for them to undergo political and ideological training before they go. Then once they're here, the students that are members of the Chinese Communist Party then have to engage in webinars and things like that back with their party branch headquarters back in China. And that might be that they're participating in seminars, or that might be that they participate in some type of observances for certain events. There was one instance where one of the members was taking part in the 200th birthday of Karl Marx. So it comes up in different ways, and they are being directed both when they're in China and overseas to do things that we've seen in other stories. So for instance, they're being told to, quote unquote, tell China's story well, and they're being told to do that to their U.S. Colleagues at school. So this isn't something that's just directed at their classmates.
There's also other examples. You have the Confucius Institutes, which used to be in the headlines. Now they're under different names, kind of hard to track those down. You have the CSSAs. There's all of this coming out, right? There's a history of Chinese espionage, some of those being students in the country. With these overseas party branches, how does that fit in, and what are the concerns with that?
That's interesting that you mentioned the Chinese Students and Scholars Association. One of the individuals that we found at the University of Colorado, Denver, also happened to be the number 2 at that school's Chinese Students and Scholars Association. So there does appear to be an overlap between the party branch members and those student groups that are actually official on campus. And these Chinese Students and Scholars Associations are, number 1, explicitly in contact and under the local Chinese consulates. In this case, for Colorado, they were in contact with and meeting with the Chicago Chinese consulate. And secondly, more broadly, it's been reported by the State Department and others that the entire system of these Chinese Students and Scholars Associations are under the control of a Chinese intelligence service called the United Front Work Department. So again, this raises serious questions and concerns about what all these students could be up to, especially given that some of them are, as we found, members of the Chinese Communist Party themselves.
We do know, Michael Lucci with State Armor, he works a lot at the state level to try and implement or get legislation moving on that. Have you seen anything on the state or even federal level to counter some of what we're talking about here, the concerns here, especially these overseas party branches?
Specifically, what occurred is that Michael Lucci and his organization, they went to, in one example, Nebraska, and they worked with a state representative, Elliot Bostar, and they were able to pass LB 644, a bill that the governor signed recently, and it's going to try to fight back against Chinese Communist Party influence operations in their state, and would require essentially at the state level some type of registration for those that are operating at the behest of a foreign power. So it would be something that it would be a state solution akin to what we have at the federal level with the Foreign Agents Registration Act. This will go into effect on October 1st, I'm told. And at that time, what I'm led to believe was that these individuals who are members of these party branches would then potentially be required to register as being a part of, the Chinese Communist Party, if nothing else, and that failure to do so would potentially result in civil, if not criminal penalties.
Well, Philip Lenczycki, as always, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me, Tiffany.
The Taliban has rejected President Donald Trump's call for the United States to regain control of the Bagram air base in Afghanistan. The site was the main base for U.S. forces before the 2021 withdrawal under then-President Joe Biden. In response, Trump issued a warning on Truth Social, writing, quote, "Bad things are going to happen if the Taliban refuses to return control of the base to the U.S." Last week, Trump suggested the Taliban might be open to a deal in exchange for government aid. He also stressed the strategic significance of a renewed American presence in Afghanistan to counter China's nuclear ambitions in the region. A Chinese journalist already jailed for 4 years in prison was sentenced to 4 more on Friday. That's according to the international press watchdog Reporters Without Borders. The journalist had reported on the early stages of the COVID-19 outbreak in Wuhan, exposing cover-ups by the Chinese Communist Party. Here's more.
Zhang Zhan had already served a 4-year prison sentence after she posted accounts of the early spread of the coronavirus from the epicenter of Wuhan. The citizen journalist was first arrested in 2020. It followed months of her reporting on crowded hospitals and empty streets that painted a more dire picture of the disease than the official narrative. Zhang went on a hunger strike after her arrest and was force-fed with a tube, her lawyers at the time said. A Shanghai court sent her to prison in December 2020 on a charge of picking quarrels and provoking trouble, the international press freedom group known by its French initials RSF said. Her health declined seriously and she was admitted to a prison hospital in mid-2023, rights groups had said. Her imprisonment had sparked protests in Hong Kong, with the U.S. State Department calling it a sham prosecution. Zhang was released in May 2024 and detained again 3 months later, according to RSF. It said Zhang's Friday sentencing, again for provoking trouble, follows her reporting on China's human rights abuses. The group is urging the international community to push Beijing to free her. A former lawyer of hers posted on X that the new case was based on Zhang's comments made on overseas websites and she should not be deemed guilty. China's authorities have never made public what specific activities led to any of Zhang's charges.
2 elderly women in southern China have been sentenced to prison. Chu Fen, 76, was taken by police while reading a book at her home in Guangdong province. Shortly after, police took Xie Li Ping, 78, from her home. Authorities say Xie was targeted because she often visited Chu's home to read Zhuan Falun together. That's the main book of the Falun Gong meditation practice. The report comes from Minghui, a US-based website run by Falun Gong practitioners that tracks cases of the group's persecution in China. Chu was sentenced last month to 2 years and 8 months in prison, and Xie to 2 years and 6 months. Coming up, Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy calling out airbag inflators made by a Chinese company, saying installing them could put American families at risk. U.S. lawmakers pushing for Taiwan to join UN-affiliated meetings, something long blocked by the Chinese Communist Party. And China's DeepSeek AI is refusing some requests and producing unsafe code. We break down what that means for users and for U.S. national security. More on that after the break here on China in Focus. Welcome back to China in Focus. I'm Stephanie Cox in for Tiffany Meyer. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy is calling airbag inflators made by a Chinese company dangerous. The manufacturer, DTN, makes devices that inflate airbags to protect drivers during crashes. Duffy is urging the auto repair industry to check for any DTN products installed in vehicles. Let's take a closer look. Duffy said whoever is bringing this faulty Chinese equipment into the country and installing them is putting American families in danger and committing a serious crime. This comes as U.S. authorities are investigating 7 incidents where airbag parts exploded during collisions. Authorities say they think the airbags in those incidents have parts made by DTN. 5 people were killed in those incidents. It's unclear how many Chinese-made airbag components have been installed in cars in the U.S. Members of the U.S. Congress say it's a matter of national interest. They want the International Civil Aviation Organization, or ICAO, to formally invite Taiwan to participate in its upcoming assembly. The ICAO is a UN agency that coordinates international air travel. Taiwan's exclusion from the agency is part of the Chinese Communist Party's long-standing effort to block the island from international organizations. In a letter, the bipartisan group of lawmakers highlighted Taiwan's key role in global aviation, noting it's a hub for dozens of airlines. They pointed out that Taiwan's largest airport ranks high worldwide for passenger and cargo traffic. Lawmakers say Taiwan's exclusion from the ICAO leaves it without access to critical safety information and undermines international aviation standards. Ahead of the United Nations General Assembly this week, the Netherlands Parliament overwhelmingly passed a motion supporting Taiwan's participation in UN events. Taiwan has been excluded from the UN system for more than half a century. Last week, the Netherlands House of Representatives passed a motion by a vote of 147 to 3. It requests the Dutch government advocate for Taiwan's participation during the UN General Assembly and in annual meetings of UN organizations. The motion stated that UN Resolution 2758 does not grant China sovereignty over Taiwan, nor address Taiwan's participation in the UN or other international organizations. The motion also states that the Netherlands, along with other democracies, has a duty to stand up against threats targeting free and democratic societies. Taiwan's Ministry of Foreign Affairs said in a statement that it sincerely welcomes and expresses its gratitude for the move. In Germany, the trial of 2 alleged Chinese spies is nearing its conclusion. The suspects are accused of leaking hundreds of sensitive documents about the European Union. They also compiled personal data on 25,000 Chinese dissidents in Europe. Prosecutors linked the case to the persecution of tens of millions of Falun Gong practitioners in China. NTD International correspondent David Vivez has the details.
The Federal Prosecutor's Office presented its closing statement in the case of Jiang Ji, a German citizen of Chinese origin, and Jiaqi X, a Chinese national, both accused of working for Beijing's intelligence services. While serving as an aide to AfD politician Maximilian Krah, Jiang Ji allegedly leaked more than 500 sensitive EU and party documents to China and compiled personal data on over 25,000 Chinese dissidents in Europe.
In our view, Jiang Ji is involved in an especially serious case of intelligence activity. This is particularly true because he concentrated his espionage efforts on many different targets. He pursued a broad range of interests on behalf of the intelligence service, military surveillance objectives, namely Leipzig-Ali Airport, Chinese dissidents in Germany, as well as developments in the European Parliament and in the party of the Member of Parliament to whom he was assigned.
The court also discussed on Wednesday a potential violation of an EU resolution protecting Falun Gong practitioners and sanctioning perpetrators in China. Falun Gong, or Falun Dafa, is a spiritual practice combining meditation with moral teachings centered on truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance. That was practiced by tens of millions in the 1990s. In 1999, the Chinese Communist Party launched a campaign to eradicate the practice, leading to widespread persecution, imprisonment, torture, and forced organ harvesting. A 2024 EU resolution mentions surveillance of Falun Gong practitioners inside and outside China, which includes the collection of personal data. David Vives, NTD News, Paris.
Refusing requests or sending risky code. Chinese AI DeepSeek is in the spotlight. New research shows the system often refuses to help programmers, or it delivers flawed, insecure code when requests involve groups Beijing considers sensitive. Cybersecurity firm CrowdStrike shared the findings with The Washington Post last Tuesday. Researchers say programs for industrial control systems are the riskiest type of request. About 23% of answers contain flaws. Requests mentioning Tibet, Taiwan, or Falun Gong, a spiritual discipline persecuted in China, are more likely to produce low-quality code. But what's behind DeepSeek's unsafe responses, and why does it matter? We spoke with Rex Lee, cybersecurity advisor at My Smart Privacy, for his insights.
Don't go out and read everything on the internet. If it regurgitates something back to the trainer and the trainer wants to manipulate that, they can add that into the algorithm and say, hey, Tiananmen Square, the way it was reported by the West, really wasn't how it happened in real life. A lot of these atrocities never occurred. That's propaganda from the West. So we're going to write that out. So you have to get down to understand how these algorithms are being developed and how they're being trained. One of the other things that lawmakers can do is write a new law that states that there needs to be algorithm transparency.
And when it comes to Falun Gong, DeepSeek AI not only produces lower quality results, it also outright refused requests 45% of the time. Cybersecurity experts, including CrowdStrike's Adam Mayers, say there could be a few reasons. DeepSeek may be following Beijing's directives, and it may also be forming its own assumptions about regions and groups Beijing is biased against. These findings are raising questions about how DeepSeek AI is being trained.
How they're training their AI is they all develop scrapers that go out and scrape everything off the internet, which is illegal. That's data theft. But again, that's not being enforced. And then they train it from there, and then they further massage it with their own biases. After it's read everything off the internet, now that has to be framed. And it all boils down to how and who's training these algorithms.
Without clear transparency rules, DeepSeek users often have no way of knowing what's shaping the answers they receive. That's all for today's China in Focus. I'm Stephanie Cox. If you have any feedback on the show or have something you'd like to see us cover, send us an email at chinainfocus@ntd.com. We'd love to hear from you. For round-the-clock original news coverage, visit us at ntd.com or download our NTD app. Thanks so much for watching. See you soon.